I just came across a creator's video of her first in-flight emergency as a physician. And just for context, she graduated med school, she said 2 days prior. And this was like her first in-flight emergency, and she was the only one on board that had any kind of medical training, which I think is so scary. I'm glad everything worked out, and I'm glad you were there for the patient. But it just reminded me of a story that my attending told me and why you shouldn't take compensation if you ever find yourself in that position. I'm not sure where he was in his training when this happened, but he did say that it was an overseas trip, and it was a very long flight, and a doctor was called a few hours into the flight. I think they still had 12 hours to go, and he found that this patient was withdrawing from alcohol. And in a hospital setting, when patients like this come in, we usually give them either like a benzo or a barbiturate, and here we give phenobarb just because the half-life is a lot longer, so they get covered for, the withdrawal period for the most part. But on a flight or on a plane, you don't really have those resources. So what he did was he stayed with the patient, monitored him for those entire 12 hours, and he prescribed him a shot of alcohol every hour to keep him from withdrawing and to stabilize him until they landed or whatever. After that, the airline did give him an envelope of cash, and he took it, not really thinking anything. And later on, he spoke with somebody that said, if that happens again, we advise that you don't take any kind of compensation, whether it's a gift card, a voucher, cash, like anything, because once you accept those forms of payment, then you are completely liable for the treatment for that patient on the plane and maybe the outcome of that patient. You are no longer protected under the Good Samaritan law, which I thought was really interesting, because in that creator's comments, people were like, did they at least comp your flight? Stuff like that, which I think is a very reasonable thing to ask. However, I think you need to be careful just because you could be liable. Although you are not legally obligated to respond to these, you do have a moral and ethical obligation to respond. So if you ever find yourself in that situation and you are able and capable to help somebody, I would expect that you would. So just keep these things in mind if that ever happens to you. So my fit for the day, I wasn't planning on going anywhere, but now I think I have to.